Welcome to the Next Gen Podcast. Stepping up to the microphone are your hosts, Bryson Wright and Alex Winton. They got next, so let's get to the show.
Hello and welcome into the Next Gen Podcast here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and I'm joined with my co-host, Alex Winton. And we got a lot to get to today. Obviously, we're recording this date after the Grizzlies lost to the Warriors. But as like we've been saying, a lot of the times at this point in the season, the games haven't really been the real story. To me and to everybody who came away from watching that game, even on the Warrior side of it, the biggest story was G.G. Jackson. In the way, I mean, he had 35 points, made 7 threes. It was really the way that he scored those points because obviously, like I said, he made the 7 threes, but then he also had a nice Euro step. The game was on ESPN, so it was like a national televised game. He was given the Steph Curry assignment. And, you know, Steph is going to be a tough assignment for anybody. But if you're 19 years old and you're getting that assignment, that just shows me how much trust the coaching staff does have in Gigi and how much he's earned since he's been here. Because, I mean, that was the big thing coming in is, like, how mature is he? Is he going to understand defensive coverages? That was the biggest question on him coming in. And I think him getting the Steph assignment and getting other tough assignments. I mean, he was guarding SGA. So he's had a lot of tough assignments kind of in this little stretch here. And I think it's going to be really good for him on the defensive end. But, yeah, I was really excited to see him. So, yeah, 35 points, made 7 threes. And just watching the game, I did watch the game on ESPN. I love watching Pete and Brevin. But whenever it's a national TV game, I usually try to go to the national TV side just to see kind of what the national people are saying about the Grizzlies and certain players. And coming away from that game, you could definitely tell that especially like Mike Breen was really impressed with G.G. Jackson. And so was Chris Paul. Chris Paul said after the game that he was super impressed and excited to play against G.G. Jackson because I didn't actually know this, but G.G. Jackson was on Chris Paul's AAU team. So I know that's got to feel weird for him. This is a dude you just coached, and now he said he made a 3 in his face and he was talking trash, but he was still calling him coach and stuff like that. So all of that's really cool. But, yeah, I mean, going back to Summer League, we've talked about the kind of stuff G.G. Jackson could be for the Grizzlies, and it's just really cool to see that kind of pay off so quickly.
Yeah. The thing about the whole Gigi thing now is not only did he score 35 points, but it's the fact that, like you said, it's on national television. That's why, like, everybody started. I want to say everybody started talking about it now because people been talking about it. But when you do it on a national stage, especially when you're in a smaller market or the players in a smaller market, that's usually when the odds are more on you and people start to pay attention because now you're seeing. I think it was Jay Kyle Man from the Ringer. I think he had like a little rookie report that just came out today, and he's talking about GG. And then you got other people. I forgot what NBA tweet or what it was some Twitter account that has a lot of followers. I think it's like NBA Central or something. They tweeted GG stuff. So like once you do it like that, and then they go look at the rest of the games, like, oh, this dude's been doing this. So it's just that the games weren't nationally televised, but. I mean, yeah, last night, Gigi was obviously, I don't want to say a lot of them came in garbage time, but like a lot of them did, the game was already out of time, but any reps for him is good reps right now. So, again, a lot of his points were from 3. He shot 7 of 14. So it's kind of like, with Gigi, like, that's really what that's really what's going to be his the basis of his game is going to be is make shots and defend. Obviously, because again, I think defensively, like you said, they're getting more trust in him, but also they want to build him into being some capable a good point of attack defender, but also a defender which we'll get into talking about start lineups. But if you're in a lineup with Bane and Ja, they would probably want to throw Gigi on the guy or the wing or the player, the guard or whatever perimeter player that causes the most problems to guard because of his athleticism, his length and size and all that. So. I do think that's why they're doing this now because they want to get him reps as guarding, the best guys. Because if he is, continues to play like this is in next year when he's playing a, more games that mean something, more impactful games, he's probably going to have that same type of role. So that's why I do like him. When again, we'll talk about it, but he has started, I think, with the last 3 or 4 ever since Bane's been back, which makes sense because again, he started alongside Bane and Jaren, and just makes a lot of sense. Obviously, you hate that Vince isn't playing. That's the only kind of bummer, I guess I would say. But for me, obviously, he did a lot of good things last night. I want to say the favorite clip that I had, just random, was more so like the pass that he made. I think was to the corner after he drove it. I think it was the corner. I can't remember. It was the Santi. I think it was the Santi. But either way, biggest thing for me with Gigi, that at least for my expectations for him, just from now going forward, is like do the stuff, the little stuff, like you said, the defensive side of the ball, rebounding, playmaking, all the little stuff that is outside of scoring. I think is going to be big for him, because I think that type of stuff, like I always say, is what makes stars. It's not the main thing that they do; it's the stuff that they do around there. Is what makes them. It's the little intangible stuff that makes stars the way they are. And so, if he wants to become a star player, like he said he wants to be, I think that doing the little things and stuff, or the little things, is important, because the scoring is just going to come naturally. But again, that was a big game, and I'm glad it was on national television. Even though we lost, we left with something. As I like to say, we left with something. So, people are starting to talk about it, which is always good.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of how I feel about like the season as a whole, is that leaving with the development of Gigi Jackson in particular, like at least you're leaving with something positive to come from the season just as a whole. Because as we are recording this, the Grizzlies, I mean, we knew this, but they're officially eliminated from the playoffs. Mathematically, even if they won every other game and all the other teams lost all their games, there's no way they can make the playoffs. So now full focus, if it wasn't already, it's all on next season, right? And with that coming in, we got to talk about who do we see as that starting 5 next season, because there's a couple different philosophies that you can get to on how you want it to go. And I'll start this conversation by saying I don't necessarily think there's a wrong answer to this question necessarily. Like I don't like there's a couple different ways you can do in any lineup that has Ja, Jaren, and Bane, right? You're just trying to fill it in besides that. And whether you want to start Smart with those guys, I either Smart, you could start Vince, you could start Gigi. It's almost like the Grizzlies have a good problem in that situation. It's like you have 3 guys that are capable of starting at the 3 with those guys and guarding multiple positions and knocking down threes from the corner, drive and kick situations. Like all of those guys can do all of that. The main question just becomes, who would you rather see with the first unit and who would you rather see off the bench? And for me, I'd probably want to see Vince or Gigi start, and not necessarily because I think they're better than Marcus Smart, but because I think Marcus Smart can do more than Vince or Gigi can as like coming off the bench. I feel like Marcus Smart can come off the bench and he can be a facilitator and he can have the ball in his hands a lot more and he can do that kind of stuff. Whereas if he's out there with Ja and Bane, I feel like you don't get to use all of his skills the way you could if he was playing with more bench units. But I do still think that based on the game, like you'll probably still close games with Marcus Smart. There's a lot of games you'll close with Marcus Smart. And I think that's the main thing, is that whether he starts or whether he comes off the bench, this is still a defensive player, like a former defensive player of the year caliber dude. And I think he's also the type of dude to where if he thinks that it'll help them win, that he would accept that role, especially because he is starting to get older. I understand the other side of it. I think Marcus Smart can play well with that 3-guard lineup. We have seen that 3-guard lineup work at times. We didn't get to see a lot of it because they only played like 6 games together. But you go back to like that Lakers game they played, the 3-guard lineup worked great, right? So it's not to say that Marcus Smart being in the starting lineup won't work or whatever. I think it can work, and I think we will see a lot of lineups where it is still Ja, Bane, and Smart out there. But I still would rather see either Vince or Gigi get that opportunity with those guys, and then just to kind of be like the glue piece and that kind of player. For me, I would probably honestly rather even see Vince more than Gigi, I don't know. I kind of go both ways on it just because I could see Gigi being that microwave scorer off the bench. But in these games where he's been starting, he's been playing so well that it's kind of like, dude, you almost got to throw him out there. I mean, if he's going to be playing like this, but it's just, to me, it's creating a good problem to have. And it's a good discussion to have kind of going into next season. And like I said, I don't think there's one right or wrong answer. It's just more about what do you want to get from that starting five? What do you want from the three position? And I think it also will have a big impact will be what they do with the draft pick and who they bring in to be like the center to play next to Jaren, or if they decide to do something different, because that all comes into it. But for now, I would probably say that it's either going to be Smart starting. I think it's between Smart, Gigi, and Vince. It's down to those three, no question. And I think either way you do it, you can make the lineups work. But for me, I'd rather see either Vince or Gigi, just because I think Smart does more for you coming off the bench than a Vince or a Gigi can, like, running the offense. But I still think if you do start, you start Gigi and bring Smart and Vince in, you can still stagger those lineups too. So there's a lot of good things they can do. I think that's the main thing. But I think I'd rather see either Vince or Gigi in the starting lineup for now.
Yeah, and let me start by saying this because there's been a lot of discussion about it, obviously, the last day or two about starting lineups next year and this and that. Obviously, they still got to figure out the five position. That's going to be something that's addressed in the offseason. I got names that I want to see, and obviously, we'll get to those when we get to them. Really, we start focus on who's going to start at three. At least for me, like you said, there's really no, and I know people are saying there's really no wrong answer in the sense of winning games. Because Jaren Bane, you're gonna win games. But like I always say, and like Dave said before, the goal is not just to win games. The goal is to win an NBA championship. And again, y'all know me, I'm always gonna say it. I'm a big historian, and I understand you go through the list of lines of NBA champions, they have certain outlier tendencies. But even then, there's a lot of benchmarks that those teams hit every single season. And for me, history tells you, hey, you probably want to start the guys, like you said, Gigi and Vince. Again, they are young, which is the downside. But if you're talking about from a standpoint of positional size, shot making, athleticism, all that, they make more sense in the starting lineup than a guy like Smart. Because like you said, while Smart does fit with the starting unit or the guys that would be in the starting unit, a lot of his I think his play would be better off the bench. And again, people think when I say Smart should come off the bench that they think automatically mean he's only going to play 20 minutes. Like you said, he could finish games. And we saw it with teams that were NBA champions. Andre Iguodala was a prime example of a guy that was a starter before he went to Golden State and literally came off the bench and did what we were talking about, where they had a guy like Harrison Barnes start games. And sometimes Andre Iguodala would finish him. We saw it even last year with the Nuggets, where MPJ was their young wing that they took in the lottery, and sometimes Bruce Brown would finish games in the NBA Finals. Like, it's fine. Like, it's not a big issue. But again, starting lineups usually do matter, and historically, you just don't win with three guards in your starting lineup. The last time this happened is like the 70s. So when I say these things, it's not because I'm trying to be objective or I hate Smart, like I'm not trying to be mean to nobody, but that's just going off history. We're trying to win a championship. I go off the history, what happened, what works and what doesn't. And so for me, I think that's really the biggest thing is that I think you go Vince or Gigi, I think, at the starting line. Now, again, I have questions about it because I think they want to – it depends because, like you said, is Smart going to buy into the role? Is he going to be cool with the role? Then on top of that, are the Grizzlies looking at it like that? Because they might see all this, and I'm not saying they don't care about this, but that might be like, okay, well, that's good, but like we want to start Smart because we don't have a lot of veterans in the lineup, which I guess is kind of fair. But again, they're going to win games regardless. They got optionality, which is great. You want to have versatility and all that. And again, making more moves to get guys with more versatility is just going to add to that, especially if you get a center that fits what this group does. But I'm going to say this point about the starters. Personally, again, it's between Gigi and Vince. But again, for me, shout out to my boy Memphis X. He said this to me, I think it was in a group chat we're in. I think it's like a month ago in February. He said, and I think a lot of it comes down to this. Like, if Gigi was drafted, and I think he said it basically like this. If Gigi was drafted in the top 5 and he was doing this, we wouldn't have a discussion about him starting or not. Like, there wouldn't be a big discussion. I think there's such a big discussion about him starting is because he was a second-round pick, and then he was a two-way contract. But people got to remember the context of why that was. He was supposed to be a lottery pick in any other draft. Basically, this draft. Shout out to Raphael, who's an NBA draft or NBA guy that covers the draft. He was talking about it. Like, he would have had Gigi in the top 5 next year, and they got him in this year. So you can't really look at that 45th pick and be like, oh, he's, that's really what he is. He really is a lottery talent or a first-round talent at worst. He just fell for reasons that were not because of his skill set. Obviously, he didn't have good raw numbers, but it wasn't because he wasn't talented. It was a lot of other stuff around it, but he fell to a good situation. So, I do think, again, with Gigi, I think if he continues to play like this, it's going to be hard to not have his name in the discussion going into next season. Because, again, if I'm not mistaken, again, like, I'm not saying this is a tall tale sign, but they didn't start him until they had, I think, what was it, Bane and Jaren back in the lineup, which makes a lot of sense because those are guys you want to see him play with a lot. He was more of a bench microwave guy before those guys got back. And so for me, I think, again, if Gigi continues to play like this, I think you got to go with it because that's another reason why they throwing him defensive assignments the way they are, because they probably want him to see how he can handle that. Because if he does start next year, that's probably what they're going to play him as, because they already know Vince can do that. But because Vince, that's what got him on the court first, was his defense. So that's why I could see either or starting. But I think either one of those guys is good. And then I think Smart is better off the bench. But again, we'll see how that works. But again, like, if they're gonna win games regardless. But if you're trying to win a chip, you start Gigi or Vince. That's just kind of where I'm going with it. Or whoever they bring in. They could have bring in another 6'8" veteran forward. Either way, those guys fit the bill of what that 3 position needs in today's NBA. That's no disrespect to Smart. That's no disrespect to anybody else, that plays on the side. Like, it's no disrespect to him. But again, it's not like we're saying, like, again, he can still finish games. You know what I mean? But it's just, again, like, history tells you that those guys, it's the guys that have the positional size and the shot making. And that really what it comes down to, the shot making. If Smart can make more shots, it'd be different. But the fact is, if you have a 5, depending on what the 5 is, and we'll talk about it. If you already have Smart that's not as inconsistent shooter, then Ja's inconsistent shooter, then the center can't shoot, you don't have a lot of floor spacing. So that just messes up your half-court offense even more, because this team needs more shot making. I've been saying for months on end, they need more shot making. And finally, we got a guy that's 6'9", who can put the ball on the floor and can shoot and can make shots, make plays, and defend. Now we're just like, oh, let's not start him. Like, again, like I said, if he was drafted in a different place, this wouldn't really be a discussion, in my opinion. But if you ask me, again, Gigi or Vince, and I'm good. But I don't know how they're gonna do it because I'm not a coach. If I was in that coach, hey, listen, if I was in them coaches meetings, I'd be clamoring for it, but I'm not. So, but that's my hope. That's my hope.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you. I mean, and I think that's a good point that you make there, talking about if he had been a lottery pick, or if people would treat him as a lottery pick, it would be looked at a lot differently. But I mean, if you look at the way he's played, I mean, he's playing like a lottery, like you said, he's playing like a lottery.
Exactly.
I mean, last 6 games, he's had 3 games of 25 plus. He's had 2 games where he's had 30. He had 2 games where he broke his previous career high. And like I said, the worst game he had in that stretch, he had 19. So we're talking about a dude that is playing right now. And I fully believe, I hope that he at least still makes second team all rookie. But I mean, if he had been playing from the beginning of the season, this would be a first team all rookie player, right?
Yeah. Hey, quick point. He's playing against NBA competition, not like second, third string guys. He's playing against like real starters, all like real players. So let me say that was another point I want to make.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, and like you said, if this was a guy who had not reclassified and he was playing for North Carolina, who, I mean, they've got a 1 seed in the tournament right now. I'm sure if he was on the team, they'd be even better, right? So, I mean, we got a dude that's averaging like 14 a game in the NBA right now and averaging 15 a game basically since he's been in the lineup consistently. I mean, if he was on that team and they were playing in the tournament right now, which is going on March Madness, then, I mean, you can't tell me he wouldn't be top 3 pick like in this year's draft. So I do agree with that point. The only thing is that I think the other thing that adds to it is the youth part of it. Is that it's not only that he's a rookie, like, because that's one thing for him to be a rookie, and we don't know how he's going to do in the playoffs and stuff like that. But I think the fact that he's a rookie and the fact that he's the youngest rookie, I think that's another reason why people might be hesitant to do it. But for me, it almost goes the other way. It's like, dude, if he's playing this well and he's 19, like imagine how good he's gonna be when he's 22. Like when he's 22 years old, he's gonna have 3 years of experience in the NBA. Like, so for me, I would want to see him get as many looks as possible. And then with the Vince thing between him and Vince, it really just comes down to now, not that GG Jackson is not like GG Jackson is a really good defender. And I think he's continued to show flashes of like how good he really can be. But I mean, right now, Vince is better on the defensive end, right?
Sure.
And I think, and that's the one thing that he has over Gigi. It's like, do you want more offense or more defense? And the only reason why I would say Vince would go in would be because of the defensive part. And because then you could still have Gigi in the role where I think he has played really well as the spark plug 6-man kind of player. Like I do think that he's performed in that role. But like we just talked about, he's performed as a starter too. So I think that it could go either way, but I think Vince, if they pick Vince, is going to be more for the defensive part, and because if you have Bane and Jaren out there with that first unit, your offense is going to be pretty good. Like you're going to be able to score enough points, and I think the thing that I'll be more worried about is how they stagger the lineups. Where even if you do start GG, you got to make sure GG has minutes with the bench units where he can do more with the ball in his hands. When John Bane are getting rest, I want G.G. Jackson to be the guy that has the ball in his hands rather than some other guys that they might have. So that's why I can see it going both ways. And that's why I said there's not really a wrong answer. But if I had to predict, I'd probably say it's most likely that they start Smart. That would be the most likely thing, just because that's kind of how the Grizzlies have been. Like, he's a veteran guy. They brought him in. They spent 2 first-round picks on him. All that kind of stuff. But if it was up to me, I'd probably either, like I said, I'd go Vince or GG. If I had to pick one, I'd say let's go Vince just for defense, and then have GG come in as the first dude off the bench, and then Smart come in to be the point guard whenever Ja's out. And then you can, and the good thing is you can sub in Smart for Bane or GG in that lineup if you need to. And I think that's one reason why I think him coming off the bench helps too. But you can sub him in at multiple positions as well. So his versatility is a really big thing too. But like I said, I probably want to see Vince and then see Smart and GG come in as well. But I mean, if if he continues to play the way he's playing right now, it's gonna be hard to say that dude shouldn't be in the starting 5 or even closing games.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's going to be interesting again, and the fact that they have this option is great because again, where this conversation was before the start of this season to where it can be at the beginning of next season is pretty obviously a night and day situation. So again, they're going to win game. You don't really feel bad about any of the options. You might not, everybody's going to have their option of which one is the best for the team. But I don't think any of the bad options at the end of the day are going to lose you games. You know what I mean? And again, a lot of that comes down to obviously more so Jaren and Bane, and that's fine. Again, that's when have your 3 stars plus 2 role players that usually have good lineups. But again, it's about optimize or what's the most optimal lineup. And like you said, again, it'll be interesting. Again, I think Vince is a guy that like you said, it depends on what you want from that spot because again, he's a better defender right now. But again, like you said, like if Gigi's done this in both roles, and again, for me, it's like I said, it all goes back to the pick because that was such a good way to put it when my boy Memphis X put it that way. It's like because MPJ was like he's a lottery pick, back end lottery pick. Now he didn't start his first season, but he started ever since the second season he started. The only reason he didn't start is because of injuries or he got hurt. And so basically, people got to remember like. If Gigi were to start next year, he would already have a year or half because he didn't play the whole year. But, basically a year of NBA experience. He'd have like 30, 40 games on his belt. Then depending on if he plays summer league or not, he'd have more of a summer league. And not only that, he'd have a training camp on the main roster as a main rotation player versus when he first came in, he was a two-way guy. So you're getting third string reps. You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot different when you come in to a training camp with reps as a main rotation player and a guy that's trying to just make the roster. It's way different. So when you think about that and you add that all up, plus the roster will be better, he'll, again, have more experience. He's probably going to get better over the offseason. You know what I mean? Like, you would think by that time, yeah.
I mean,
think by that
Jackson,
go ahead.
Jackson, we see like first week of next season. I think he's going to be a way better player because, like you said, I don't think it's a if he plays summer league, he's definitely going to play summer league. Like, there's no question about that. And like you said, with the training camp, like the dude we see the first game of next season is going to be so much better than like even he is now.
Yeah, and the only reason I said if is because, again, shout out to my boy Cam. He said it to me too. What if this is quote unquote his summer league because he's playing so well? Like, they see this for the next, I don't know how many games, 12, 14 games. What if they say, hell, he doesn't have to play something? Now, I don't think they'll do that, but just think about it. If he still averaging like 25, 30 points, you know what I mean? Like, all these reps, they might say he don't have to play something, but I doubt it. Again, I think he's going to play summer league just because, again, he is 19 years old.
Yeah, I think it's just because it's when you look at the players they've had. I mean, even Desmond Bane plays summer league.
Yeah, that's why I said it. Yeah, that's why I said he still probably plays summer league. Yeah, but either way,
and Bane was, what, 23? Or
20. Yeah, 23, 24, something like that. Yeah, 23, 24. So yeah, even if you add all that up, point is, by the time he gets to training camp, he's gonna be a totally different player probably than we see, a better one at that. So, by the time they get to training camp, time it will reveal itself how that goes. Because again, they said it was an open competition last time, obviously, because now Ja probably, his suspension kind of opened that up because again they were like, okay, there's an open competition, but it might be open competition again. It should be, I think, honestly, even if you bring in a veteran wing guy that fits the profile, it's probably still gonna be a competition as it should be because training camp and preseason should tell you a lot. So as it did with the last preseason, so. It's going to be fun. Again, I'm glad that we're in this spot versus where we were. So I'm not going to really complain too much yet. Obviously, again, like I always say, I'm going to continue to say there's more work to be done. Obviously, you got Vince and Gigi under good contracts and they're young players that are really good and fit the profile. But again, a lot more work to be done. There's still a big hole at the 5 that they need to fill. Not only that, they probably need to get probably one more combo forward. And, we'll talk about that as offseason goes and what they're going to do. But, there's a lot more work to be done. And once they get that work done, and then I see what goes into training camp, then the lineups, then we'll get there. But again, just to have this option already right now, months removed, like we're a long ways away from that. I do think it's a good situation that we're in, or a better situation than what we were in. So, like you said, we left with something this year, even though we got eliminated. We left with something. We left with a little bit of something because again, depending on what they do this offseason, depending on how they, how everybody else improves. Again, like I think Josh said it last night. I think he quoted the tweet where it was like Gigi had the most threes for a rookie or something like that. And Josh was like this, just wait. He said, just wait. So, it could get, I don't use the term scary hours like hard, but like it could get it could look a lot different now. We ain't gonna be down for long, is what I'll say. We won't be down for long.
No question. And I mean, with Gigi playing as well as he did, I don't know what the Grizzlies are going to do with a lottery pick. But if there's anybody in the lottery I need to go look that has a hometown in South Carolina, if their hometown is in South Carolina, I think they might be a Memphis Grizzly next year. Just because we've had some good luck when it comes to drafting people from South Carolina, and Gigi being another player that's definitely on that track. We didn't mean to talk about only Gigi this episode. We do got some other stuff we wanted to get to. Main thing being Desmond Bane being back as well. I know we talked a little bit about it with him playing with Gigi, but just to see him back on the court, like first things first, just the offense looks so much better because it's just like, oh my gosh, you can't put 2 and 3 people on Jaren every time he drives. You have Jaren can now play this kind of, he can play this kind of Roman offensive role where he's setting screens and doing catch and shoot threes and posting up a little bit. And it's like, wow, it's insane what you can do when you have somebody else that can actually handle the ball out there with him. And it's crazy how much more efficient he's been since that as well. But, I digress when I get into that. But, yeah, Desmond Bane, especially those first 2 games, just seeing him back on the court and seeing, like, how much better the team as a whole played with him. He was knocking down his threes. You even got to see some of that downhill Des on the fast break and stuff like that. Just the way that he looks fully healthy. Like, that's the main thing, too, is it doesn't look like he's missed a step. I know he didn't play great in that Warriors game, and I think he is going to be out for tomorrow's game with back soreness. But I think that's more of like being cautious, and they're not going to play him every game down this stretch. He's probably going to be in and out of the lineup, give him some rest days, make sure he's all good, because that's the main thing is that, he's still going to be healthy going into next season. So, but I mean, from on that standpoint, he's been really good, and we are continuing to see kind of like that playmaking jump that we saw from him starting at the end of last season and then early this season as well without having Ja out there, and how well he actually did playing point guard at times. So I was glad to see that he looks healthy. He doesn't look like he's lost a step or anything. I know it was only a sprained ankle, so not something you really expect to be like a long-term thing, but it's always good just to see him back out there and kind of remember, like, oh yeah, this is like one of the best. This is what one of the most talented players, one of the most talented perimeter offensive players in the NBA looks like, and how much different the Grizzlies offense is going to look like. And just adding Bane, and you go from by adding Bane to the lineup, you go from okay, we are now competing with the Thunder and going to overtime on the road with the Kings, right? And you're still missing Ja, you're still missing Vince, you're still getting a new lottery pick that's probably going to be playing center or bringing somebody in playing center. Like, the team is going to look a lot different next year. And even with this roster that we have been talking about all season has a lot of flaws, even just it being somewhat healthy, right? You're still missing Ja. You're still missing like the guy that makes everything run. But even just adding Bane and having Jaren out there, and you're now competing with the other teams in the West. So it's like there's just it when you're talking about having GG, having Vince, having Ja out there, and having that full team. Obviously, they're probably not going to. No team usually is fully healthy the whole season. People are going to be in and out of the lineup, but like having that depth and having options in the starting 5, along with having Bane doing more of, if John needs to sit down, Bane can play point guard because he's had these situations where Ja wasn't playing and he's been the point guard. And I think he has kept some of that facilitating and all that. And I think when you see all of it kind of come together next year, I still think it's gonna be tough for them to get beat next year. Like they're gonna be a tough team to beat on any night when you look at like the depth that they could possibly have, especially if Brandon Clarke, who we'll get to next, is supposed to be coming back next Wednesday, hopefully. And if he's back and he's as good as he has been in the past, and he's healthy, there's no question that he's going to be in that rotation too. So it's good to see Bane come back, and it just kind of reiterates what we've been thinking of. If they were healthy, they'd be a lot better, and that next year they're going to have a lot of good options with Bane, with Gigi, with John, everything like that.
Yeah, and to touch on the point about, I know it was just an ankle sprain with Bane. I think it was like a grade 3, they said. So that's usually like if I'm not mistaken, I'm no doctor or anything, but I remember looking at it was like a full tear. And like I said, it touched earth, like his ankle touched earth. And again, he couldn't even finish the game. That's how you know it's bad. Bane's a warrior, so he usually played through stuff. He couldn't even finish that game. He just walked off, and we ain't seen him for 2 months. But again, Bane has historically always come back from injuries quicker than he needs to. Like that's just what he does. Like even the toe injury last year, he played through a broken toe. Like Bane's a warrior. Like he ain't, like again, I mean, he is swole. So I mean, he ain't no guy that's just soft or anything like that. Like he's tough. Like he's gonna play through stuff and stuff like that. Like he does the work to get back. So I'm not really surprised that he got back that as soon as he did. But obviously I do think again the splits haven't looked great. I'm looking at him right now in terms of his 3 games back. Obviously that Golden State game didn't really help it. He's only shooting like 33% from the field, 32 from 3. I mean, he is shooting 86 from the line. I think he's averaging 17, 5. Yeah, 17, 3 and 5. which not bad numbers, but again, it's more so for me. It's like the eye test, like you said. He looks good, looks healthy. Obviously, the same shots are the same. They're gonna start falling eventually. And again, like you said, it's just giving them guys another threat. Obviously, yeah, when you add a star player like him, that's just another threat on the court that helps role players be able to play off of them and vice versa and stuff like that. And also, like you said, with Jaren, obviously having another guy where they have to focus on him, pay attention to defensively. Obviously, Gigi's added some of that, but Gigi's not no star yet. Hopefully he can become that. But obviously, Bane is one of the stars. So, that adding, that's helping obviously Jaren because he doesn't see as many double teams like you said. So, but I mean, again, Bane has looked fine to me. Like you said, he's gonna have rest days. Jaren's gonna have rest days too. That's what we expect. They're gonna play 2 games, sit 2 games. Like that's what's gonna happen. They said back soreness. He doubtful tomorrow. He ain't playing. Pretty sure that back's not that sore. Probably is a little bit sore. He probably, yeah, my back's sore. Probably a little bit of rest day. We know this. We ain't, we got a good idea what that means, quote unquote. And they're playing the Spurs. Like, come on, like no disrespect, but you know how it is. You know how the game is. But I mean, again, he'll play. Again, there was no real doubt for me for him playing. I could have seen a situation where he didn't come back, but like even he said it. I think I posted it. There was no reason why he wouldn't, because again, like I said, the benefit of him playing with, well, obviously Vince hasn't played yet, but the benefit of him playing with Gigi and Vince and probably BC, those guys like they need reps all together, because again, if you expect this team to be where it's supposed to be, I'm pretty sure not Ja, he's hurt, but Jaren, Bane, Vince, Gigi, and Vince, Gigi, and BC will all be a big part of the rotation next year. So you want to see those guys get reps together if they can, even if it's 1 or 2 games or it's like 3 or 4 games. Because I remember people forget when I think who was it? Paul George came back, I think, from that leg injury. He only played like 12, 13 games at the end of that season. He wasn't great games, but it set the stage for what his next season would be. And I think he was all-star that next season. They had a pretty good season after that, like, record-wise. So, like, all these reps matter. Like I think Bane even said, like, all these development reps matter. They haven't done, like he said, we haven't done the ultimate goal. We haven't won a championship. So why am I going to be sitting out? Like, you know what I mean? And again, like I've been said, they're not old guys. These guys are in the right. Bane's 25, like right in the prime of his career. Like these guys are not old. They've been different. These guys are older veterans getting hurt, and they sit out like when Dame sat out in Portland, or when the Lakers had to sit out with LeBron and AD, I think a couple years ago, or even like last year. I mean, I know they had Lucas sit out, but he's younger, but like Kyrie's a little bit older. Like either way, not same situation. You know what I mean? There's a lot. It's a way different situation, different context. So there's benefit in him coming back, and we've seen it. Like there's a benefit with him playing with Gigi, and vice versa. Like Gigi playing with Bane. Like just seeing actual NBA players play together that are going to be here next year in some type of role is really good. And so for me, I'm glad that he's back. I'm not going to really care about the numbers. I mean, obviously I want him to play better, because again, if he doesn't play better, I'm going to have jokes for him, just as I do with everybody on this dang team. If they play with bad, I'm just going to joke on them. It's just part of what I do. But yeah, I mean, I hope he doesn't sit too many games, but again, he's going to sit some, but I hope he plays enough to where, or plays the main games where everybody going to play in. So like, hopefully, like we'll get to BC, or like we'll with BC. I think he's supposed to be, like he said, supposed to be back. Hopefully Wednesday. That's what Mike Wallace was saying. He was saying like they want to get him back in a home game. And then he said the one home game you look at is the Lakers. Like wink, wink. Like he's supposed to we probably gonna see like hopefully a doubt for a questionable in the next few games. That's the hope. That's what I'm assuming. So, hopefully he plays in those type of games where everybody's back, and, you see that all come together. But yeah, no, it's good to see Bane back on the floor. Cause like you said, it's just, Bane is, I know people depend, some people, if you're not a Grizzly fan, they might not like how Bane play. I love how Bane play. So it's just a good feeling to see him play. You know what I mean? The game missed Desmond Bane. Or at least I did. I miss watching Desmond Bane play. So it's been good to see him out there. Obviously he adds more than just his on court value. He is one of the leaders. So yeah, no, it's been great to see him back, obviously, and healthy. Like you said, that's the big thing. He looks healthy. He looks healthy enough. And listen, if he ain't, I can't tell. You know what I mean? He usually, that's how he usually is. If he ain't healthy, I can't really tell, because he carries himself to the point where it looks like he ain't really hurt. So yeah, it's good to have him back.
Yeah, definitely good to have Des back. And then like we were talking about with Brandon Clarke, hopefully he will be back by next Wednesday against the Lakers. The good thing for him, kind of like what you were saying with Bane coming back, is that he can get a little bit of just he can come back and he can play on that Achilles and see how it feels now rather than that come in at the beginning of next season. Good that we actually do have a date for him. I think, and honestly, when he comes back, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him, uh, very early, come off the bench and everything like that. I don't think he'll start kind of like Bane did, just because he hasn't been a starter most of the time of his career. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see him as the first person coming off the bench when it is his first game. And I'd like to see him, play minutes with Jaren like we've seen in the past. See what he looks like playing maybe even some minutes at the 5. We'll see what happens with that. Just because they are a little bit undersized right now. You talk about who they have at the 5. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they throw him out there for some minutes and try to at least survive with him out there. And then you also get a little bit of a look of what that would look like for some small ball lineup or something too. But overall, I mean, the main thing I'm gonna be looking for is his athleticism. How is he running? How is he jumping? How is he attacking the offensive glass? Because that's the main things that we need for Brandon Clarke, and that's the main things I'm gonna be looking for. Just because, like, I know, like, Bane also does. He's an athlete. Everybody in the NBA, if they get injured and it hinders their athleticism, it could be an issue. But specifically for Brandon Clarke, when so much of his game is based on the fact that he's a high flyer and he can jump for the offensive boards and he can get putbacks and he, does a bunch of stuff, defensive rebounds, boxing out, like all that kind of stuff that he does. And even on when he gets to his floaters and the pick and roll, he's always finishing at the top of his jump. So that be the only thing that I'm looking for, is to see how much, like, if any athletic drop off there's going to be for him. And I'm not saying, first game back. A lot of times people do say it might take a whole year from the injury to feel like yourself, and then a whole year from that to even feel back to yourself from a basketball standpoint. Like, it might take you a year just to be like, okay, I feel good enough to run up and down the court, but you might not still feel 100% like you did before for even longer after that. So that's going to be the main thing I'm looking for. And then hearing, what he says about it as well. How is he feeling? Is he feeling good? Is he feeling soreness? Is he feel like he can't jump as high? All that kind of stuff is what I'm going to be looking for. But as long as he's feeling healthy, that's going to be the main thing for me. And I'm going to be just excited to see him back out on the court, regardless of what he looks like.
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, that's really what I care about, is to see him out on the court. Them games don't have to be good, like I just said with Paul George. Some games weren't good for them them 12, 13 games he played. I remember them games somewhat, because I think a couple were on national TV a while back. But even then, like, I don't expect that. I just expect him to play, get these reps, basically to shake the rust off. Is what they used to say. Like, I don't expect nothing too crazy. Obviously, I'll be looking at stuff like you said, like that. His game is predicated on athleticism, but I do think the thing that makes up for his athleticism is that he wasn't just athletic; he had a high IQ. Like, a lot of people don't really like. People see the athleticism, see the highlight plays, but people don't understand that he's a real smart basketball player. Like, he has a really good feel in the pick and roll, for little pockets and crevices where he can get floaters off. He's an underrated passer. He can make, certain passes out of, DHO situations, like stuff like that, like pick and roll situations, short roll, just all that little stuff. And again, with rebounding, again, he's really good at having position, because again, he's never been the biggest guy, but not only is he athletic in terms of jumping, but he is strong. He is strong for 6'8". So, we did see him play at the 5 before, which I expect him to play some minutes at the 5, because again, if he's still a non-shooter, that's probably where you're going to play not most of his minutes, but a lot of his minutes, if it's going to be in a lineup that he's the only non-shooter in. So, and I expect him to be fine. I mean, we again, this is people forget how good Brandon Clarke was in the playoffs. Like, that's why there's a lot of stock in Brandon Clarke, because he performed in the playoffs. You need guys that did perform in the playoffs, and he played against who was it? Who was it? The Wolves, and, like, I mean, he had a really good series that series. And again, he was playing 5 because Jaren couldn't stay on the floor because he's in foul trouble. So, he's a big reason why we won that series. So, obviously I don't expect him to I've seen some Brandon Clarke posters before, one in real life, when I think he dunked on Jan Mahimi. I think it was when they played for Washington. I remember seeing that. That was crazy. I don't expect that type of, Brandon Clarke, but I still expect a good, productive Brandon Clarke to be there, because again, he's a smart basketball player. Again, people gotta understand, when you have a skill set or skill level, when your game is not, when obviously your game is gonna be predicated on athleticism and it can take some stuff away from your game, but if you're just a smart player and you know how to find, and you are smart, not only smart player but a role player, if you that really doesn't affect your role and you can figure out how to adjust and adapt, you'll be fine in the long haul. So, I'm just excited to see how he plays, how he performs, how many minutes he gets, because obviously, even if he plays, he might only play 15, 20 minutes, which is fine. I don't expect him to play 25, 30 minutes, depending on how the state of this roster is anyway. Play the little 15, 18, 20 minutes at max. But yeah, it's gonna be good to see him back out there, because again, he did say he was gonna come back this season. They never ruled it out that he was gonna come back this year. They always said hey, he's looking like he's gonna come back. He's looking like come back, and then hopefully it's time. Again, they haven't confirmed this. But again, I know how the Grizzlies are, and when they got Mike Wallace talking on pregame, talking about, hey, we expect these guys to be back here. It usually happens. Like they said, they want a home game. Home game is against LA. I'll be very if he doesn't play against LA, either they lied or something happened. Either way, they lied. You know what I mean? Because that means Mike Wallace was just giving us just a bunch of lies. But I don't think that's the case. So hopefully we see him this next week. That's really the hope. Within the next week, I'm expecting to see Brandon Clarke back. So, but it'll be good to watch. Haven't seen him in a while, because again, he's fun to watch too. I know he's just a role player, but it's he doesn't do all the stuff that stars do, but he does the little things as real basketball fans appreciate. So, I'm ready to see him play.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, talking about that Timberwolves series and going back to that, I mean, he did so well in that series that they went out and got Rudy Gobert. That is how good he played in that series. They're like, no, we're not letting this happen again. And it's worked out great for the Timberwolves, obviously, this season. But that almost felt like a direct retaliation to Brandon Clarke, just out rebounding the entire Timberwolves team. And in clutch situations, you go back to that Game 5, Ja had that incredible close to the game in Game 5, right? But that big three that he hit came off of a Brandon Clarke offensive rebound and kick out. So it's you go back and you watch those and you realize that some of the biggest plays that you remember were actually started because of Brandon Clarke. And I think he's going to, help solve a rebounding issue they've had this season. Him along with them most likely, and they should be adding another center like we've been talking about. But yeah, always a lot of fun to talk about the Grizzlies, regardless of how the season's going. And I appreciate everybody who listens to this week's episode of the Next Gen Podcast here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and I was joined by my co-host, Alex Winton. Hope you guys are all enjoying March Madness and college basketball season as all that's coming up. We're going to have some breakdowns on those and some of the players to watch that, we've been watching over the last week, and we're going to hit on those a little bit on the next episode. When we come back next week, it should be time for the Sweet 16, so we should have 2 rounds of games to kind of talk about and players to talk about as well. So we'll definitely keep y'all updated on that. But as I always say, thank you for listening to this week's episode, and we will see y'all next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Gen Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a like and a comment wherever you download your podcasts. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co, where you will find comprehensive coverage of all things Memphis sports and how you can become an insider. We'll see you back here next time.